Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making a salted caramel cheesecake. This is not your average cheesecake with a weak drizzle of caramel on top. This is an incredibly luxurious, amazing cheesecake with caramel undertones woven through every bit of the recipe. It is perfect for this chillier weather that's right around the corner, and you are going to love it. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you want to do is get your oven preheating to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, we will make our cheesecake crust. We start with 1.5 cups of graham cracker crumbs. Like I said, this isn't just a basic cheesecake, so we are going to bump up the crust a level, making it extra flavorful by adding a 1/3 cup of finely chopped pecans. You can use toasted or untoasted pecans, either will work fine. I have some chopped pecans, but they are not nearly fine enough, so I'm just going to add them to a bag. And you could blitz these in the food processor, you could beat them up with a rolling pin. I'm just going to use the back of a spoon to break them up nicely. And I'll just show you how these look once I've broken them up. Pour them right back into my dish. You want them to be nice and fine like this. That way you don't have any large pieces in your crust. And we'll go ahead and add this right in with our graham crackers. And we'll also add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar and 1 tablespoon of firmly packed light or dark brown sugar. The little bit of brown sugar is going to add even more depth of flavor to our crust. We'll go ahead and quickly toss these ingredients together until they're nicely combined. Make sure you don't have any clumps from the brown sugar remaining. And next you are going to need 7 tablespoons of salted butter. If you only have unsalted, just add a pinch of salt into the crumbs. Grab my spatula because I want to get every bit of melted butter in there, because you guys know we do not waste butter around here. I want every drop in there. And we'll just toss these ingredients together until all of the crumbs are moistened by the butter. Should be a nice sandy mixture. So once that butter is nicely distributed, grab your pan. You need a 9-inch springform pan for cheesecake. We're going to add our crumbs right in there. And we'll just firmly tamp the crust into the bottom of the pan and up the sides. Now, to help keep your cheesecake from cracking, one of the best things you can do, I'm sorry if you've watched my other cheesecakes and are tired of hearing me say this, but it's so important. You want to make sure you take that crust as high up the sides as you can. And this should be plenty of crust to be able to do that. You don't need a super thick layer on the bottom. Now what this does is it's going to greatly reduce your chance of ending up with a cracked cheesecake. One of the biggest causes of a cheesecake cracking is because it shrinks as it cools. If that cheesecake is stuck to the sides of the pan, some tension occurs and you end up with a big ugly crack in the center. If you have this crust higher than your cheesecake batter, then what's going to happen is as the cheesecake shrinks, the crust will shrink a little bit with it. It's not a lot of shrinking, it's just a little bit, but it's enough that if that crust isn't there, it causes cracks. When the crust shrinks with it, you end up with no cracks and a beautiful smooth-topped cheesecake. Now I like to use, as you can see, just a small straight up and down glass, but you could use a measuring cup instead to make this quick and easy. All right, we'll set our crust aside. You do not need to pre-bake it. It's just going to sit while we prepare our filling, and grab yourself a large mixing bowl. Now to this mixing bowl, we're going to add 24 ounces of cream cheese. This is 3 of the 8-ounce bricks. Make sure you are using full fat cream cheese and that it is this brick style kind. You don't want to use the kind sold in tubs. The spreadable version will not work properly in this recipe, neither will low fat. Your cream cheese should be softened to room temperature before you begin, otherwise you're likely to end up with a lumpy cheesecake. All right, our last brick. Now along with this, we're going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar. Now as usual, you could absolutely use a stand mixer for today's recipe, but I'm just going to be using my electric hand mixer instead. We'll use this to cream together the cream cheese and sugar until you have a smooth, lump-free, creamy mixture. And this time I actually remembered to plug in my mixer before I try to turn it on, so I'm counting that as a win. When you are making cheesecake, it's very important that your ingredients be well combined and you have a smooth, uniform batter, but it's also important to not overmix things. You don't want to whip too much air into the cream cheese at this stage, and later on when we add the eggs, it's also very important to not overmix. So let's take a look, make sure our batter is nicely combined. You don't want to see any lumps at this stage. You want to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl, and that is especially true if you're using a stand mixer, because that bowl tends to have a little divot in the very bottom, and cream cheese loves to hide there, and then it resurfaces when you add it to your springform pan, so just be aware of that. Okay, next we will add our sour cream. You could use full-fat Greek yogurt instead. This is 1/2 cup of sour cream. This is also room temperature, or at least near room temperature. And we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract as well, and we'll stir these ingredients in until everything's nicely combined. Let's knock down that cream cheese. All right, once again, we have a nice and smooth batter, so now we can add our eggs. I do add the eggs last because, as I mentioned, you don't want to overbeat them because that can actually mess with the final texture of your cheesecake, keep it from being too creamy, get too much air in there, and cause a cheesecake that rises and then deflates. So you need 3 eggs. We'll add them one at a time. Always crack them in a separate bowl, and these should ideally be room temperature as well. Oh my goodness, see why we do a separate bowl? You don't want any shell in your cheesecake. Pull that out of there. Using room temperature ingredients is going to help everything combine evenly and help eliminate lumps. Now we're going to lightly beat these eggs with a fork, which is going to give them a head start on incorporating into the batter, and again, minimize the amount that we need to mix them. So we'll add 1 egg, and with our mixer on low speed, we'll stir that in until it's just combined. And we'll repeat with our 2nd egg, and these are large eggs, in case I didn't already say that. Egg number 2. And finally, egg number 3. All right, the final egg. And once again, just until that's combined. For the last time, we'll go ahead and scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl. Just ensure you have a nice uniform mixture here. Ours is looking pretty good. There's a little bit up on the sides that needs to get mixed in there. Perfect. Now grab your crust from earlier. And we're going to pour half of our cheesecake batter into the crust. You don't have to measure it. I just sort of eyeball this, which I'm notoriously bad at doing, so if I can do it, you can do it without a measuring cup. Trust me. Watch me mess this up on camera. Now I'm just going to spread this into the bottom of the pan. I'm going to add a little bit more. So this cheesecake has a nice ribbon of caramel inside the cheesecake. So for this, you're going to need 1/4 cup of caramel topping. I have a recipe for caramel topping on my website. Alternatively, you could use store-bought. Homemade's always better, but I won't judge. I'll try not to judge. And we are going to pour this over our cheesecake layer. It's not going to cover it in an even layer, that's fine. Just kind of going to ribbon it back and forth. You want to distribute it pretty evenly, but it's not an exact science again. And we are not leaving behind any of that caramel. We're going to use all of it. And now top this with your remaining cheesecake batter. And you'll notice that caramel ripple is just moving around a little bit. That's totally fine. It doesn't need to be smack dab in the center. We just want to have that ribbon of caramel in there. All right, now we'll take this over to the center rack of our 325° Fahrenheit preheated oven. We're going to let it bake for about 50 minutes. When it's finished baking, the center will still be a little bit jiggly like Jell-O, but the edges should be pretty much set. They may have even puffed up a little bit, that's fine. So something I've been doing these days to even further ensure that my cheesecake does not crack after it's finished baking is I will turn off the oven when it's done, and I will crack open the door just a couple of inches, and I'll let the cheesecake cool in that oven for an hour before I remove it. Then I let it cool completely before I transfer it to the fridge. After baking and cooling, the cheesecake will need to chill in the refrigerator for at least 6 hours, preferably overnight. Once it has chilled, we can add our final layer of caramel sauce. Now I did prep a cheesecake last night, so I have one here that I'm ready to decorate or finish with you. And as you can see, beautiful, smooth, crack-free top. That's exactly what you should have at home too. I hope you do. So this recipe calls for 1 cup of caramel topping total. We put 1/4 inside the cheesecake, so the remaining caramel will go on top. You don't have to use all of it, but I like to. So I'm just going to pour this evenly over the cheesecake. And again, this is a nice homemade caramel topping. I will make sure to link to this. Like a nice layer. So I like to add this caramel after the cheesecake has cooled completely, or at least after it's been in the fridge for a couple of hours. Technically, we could go ahead and cut into this cheesecake right now, no need to wait for anything. But if we do that, it's important to note that some of the caramel will start to spill over the edge of the cheesecake and it will kind of puddle off the edges. What I like to do is I'll put this back in the fridge, let that caramel harden up a little bit, and then when I cut the cheesecake, all that caramel will stay on top really nicely. This is a salted caramel cheesecake, so let's not forget about the flaky sea salt. I have some here. This is, I believe it's pronounced Maldon sea salt. I will include a link to this because I buy mine on Amazon. You can add this right now, but while it's in the fridge, the salt's going to dissolve a little bit. The flavor will be there, so it's not a big deal, but I usually add the sea salt just before serving, so that is what I'm going to do right now. Pop this in the fridge for a little bit. All right, I did let this cheesecake chill a little bit longer so the caramel would firm up just a bit. Now, I do not ever remove the cheesecake from the springform pan until I'm ready to serve, and then when I want to store it, just pop that springform pan right back on and you can cover it with some foil if you'd like. We'll add our sea salt. I'm gonna do this with my hands. It just makes it look so pretty. And let's go ahead and cut a slice. Oh, my favorite part. Actually, the most nerve-wracking part. I'm notoriously bad at slicing things. I'm so excited to share this with you. Look at that stretchy caramel. Oh my gosh. All right, I left a little bit of the end behind, but this isn't too bad for my first slice. That is how you make this decadent caramel cheesecake. I cannot wait for you to try this one at home. If you try it out, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. You can see that subtle caramel ripple in the middle. Oh, this is so good. This is amazing. It's decadent. You will want to cut yourself small slices unless you're crazy like me. But oh my gosh, I cannot wait for you to try this. The crust. Oh my gosh, the crust. Mm. All right, we'll start. I just broke my glass. Today's recipe has a nice, oops. After baking and cooling the room temperature. I love cheesecake.